Welcome. I'm Heather Wolcott, and you are tuning in to the Health and Nutrition Success Show, helping you achieve all things health. Are you ready to prioritize and optimize your health? Join me for inspiring, motivating, and educational steps for you to think about playing the long game when it comes to your health and your life. I share stories around how implementing lifestyle changes have changed others' lives, and you will learn how you can do the same. I love blowing minds with cool tips and hacks that can make a significant difference if you try them, and to see the bigger picture of what happens if you don't. After the show, send me an email to let me know how this show has impacted you or the health of someone you love. Health and Nutrition Success starts now.
Wow. Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Pat, and I get to take this wild ride of life right here with the most incredible Heather Wolcott. Now, today's show for me is extremely important. I'm so glad, Heather, you picked this out. You know, warrior versus worrier, how your mindset can change your outcomes. And I am really glad you're doing this show now because, I mean, we've seen what happens when you kick off the year and you have high aspirations for whatever you're going to do. And then somehow it's like a big oopsie, right? Yeah. But the factor we don't put in, and this is really something that if we could all become more aware of this, I think we'll all get a better start. And that is the impact and the energy of Worrier. Mm-hmm. And I did an interview not too long ago with the gentleman that founded GoDaddy, Bob Parsons. And out of everything he said to me, there was one thing I hung on to. And he said, I never worry. I never worry. And that I stayed with that for a while. And I thought, well, how is that? And that's what you're going to talk about today. You know, warrior versus worrier, how your mindset can change outcomes. Now, I don't know what he did to not worry. Yeah. But clearly it worked out for him, don't you think?
Yeah, he's doing okay. Yeah.
Let's talk about this from where you said. You picked these two words, warrior, warrior. Worry is, there are two strange bedfellows that I put together, worry and doubt. And it's almost like they're the tag team of mindset wrestling. You know, like the wrestling. They're like the tag team. There's like doubt comes in, then the other one taps the other one, it comes in. But what is the impact of this? What is the state of worry on the body, on the mind, on the soul, and the stress level for people?
I think we have to also put in the frame before we start that it's okay to worry in like maybe small doses. Like you might have a moment where you feel a little worried about something and then it passes. But when people live in a state of worry and doubt, sometimes people are wired a little bit more that way. So it's not to offend anyone's personality, but I think there is a choice ultimately when we're faced with a situation, when we're faced with something that's unexpected, something that we perceive to be hard, just difficult or stressful. And then we just live in this, I kind of have this visual of a downward spiral. There's no upward energy. It just kind of brings you down and down and down. And, you know, the tagline that I've used for years is the body follows the mind. And when our mind is just going in this spiral of all the negativity and all the physical feelings that we get when we're in that state of worry or we're in that state of fear or anxiety, I think some of those are synonymous. And when I presented this to a group of 9th grade girls at my daughter's school, I put in other synonyms for stress, because some of them might not identify with the word stress, like I'm not stressed, but they have a lot of anxiety or they have a lot of tension in their body. And we can kind of lump a lot of those emotions together because they do manifest in our physical, right? When we are constantly worried that we're sick, we're afraid that this is going to happen, or like a hypochondriac who just lives in the state of like, something's wrong, something's wrong. I always say your brain hears every thought and everything that you say. So as you start repeating and echoing those thoughts and those words, when you have conversations with people,
yeah,
I think the body starts taking that on. And I think we could really change the trajectory of our health if we took a different mindset and a different approach, so that our brain is hearing and listening to our thoughts and our words in a more positive way of healing or of overcoming.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that I think we're all acutely aware of these days is it doesn't matter how much science we get on the impact of stress on our lives, there's still not enough of it. And, part of this is looking at what it is we think we can manage. And, so often we think we're really helpless in what we can do. But that's the difference with this show, because
Yeah.
there's a warrior aspect to this.
Yeah.
And you really do have to, you do have to put on that, you have to put on the whole warrior suit and get yourself ready. But let's talk a little bit about what we perceive as the stressors. Let's talk about it. Now, look, clearly, if you're hiking and a bear is chasing you and won't give up, that's like a real thing. That's like, yeah, that's a level of worry. That's a level of chemicals in the body. That's like, I just got to keep running here, right? Until you decide what to do, how to turn and face that bear. And there's instructions on that, right?
Yeah, there are. But actually, I want to pause right there, because I think if you see that bear and you take off running, I think you just became a warrior, because you are using your resources to escape the situation, right?
Exactly.
So it's kind of, I mean, it can get kind of nuanced and in the weeds with, every little action or non-action. But here's the difference. And this is how I personally break it down. There are others who might have a different, perspective on it, but this is what a lot of the research is kind of showing. There's a mindset, and your mindset is going to also dictate how you perceive something that's a stressor. So there are really two ways to perceive something that's stressful, and you can substitute whatever word you want for stressful. Either it's a threat or it's a challenge. And those are going to take you down two totally different paths. So let's say the bear is after you. A threat is something that is a difficult or stressful situation in which you perceive you have no resources. There is absolutely nothing that you can do, and you are just a victim to this. It's hopeless. Whereas a challenge it's a hard, stressful, difficult situation, but you have resources. There's something that you can do to move yourself a little bit forward or out of the way in some way. So there's like a little bit of hope when you see it as a challenge, and it's like hopeless when you see it as a threat. So now we start seeing the bear, which is very scary. But if you think, well, I can run, maybe I can run faster than the bear. I can throw something at the bear. I can try to distract the bear. All of a sudden now you didn't realize it, but you went into a warrior mode. I have some resources. There's something I can do here, versus saying, take me now. I'm just going to lie here and let the bear maul me to death.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a real extreme example, but we can kind of take that on in smaller bites in our lives, right? Something happens to us, and we just said, well, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to sit, I'm going to curl up in a ball, and I'm just going to be stressed and worried. So for me, worry takes a lot of inaction. I see it as an inaction. I curl up in a ball, I close my eyes, and I'm just going to let this horrible thing happen to me. Whereas the warrior, even if it's just a little bit of fire inside of you, says, I can call someone who's been through this before and maybe find out what they did. I can go for a walk and get some fresh air and think this through before I completely freak out. And it's just that little bit of action that can take you from a worrier to a warrior. I think so. What do you think?
I agree with you. And, I had a real life situation. Now, the bear is kind of metaphoric, because those of you out there,
I don't
it's
know
very scary. Oh my God. And, and I've been in that situation. And of course, what I've learned is you don't actually run from a bear. We're just giving you all an example. So don't email us about poor bear practice. But I had a real example. I was into a major food chain, international, a wholesale food chain. The company started here in the Pacific Northwest. Went in to do my groceries, getting stuff I needed, right? Because they have good prices. The shock, though, was when I went into the cold food storage where the milk is and the butter is. And I walked in, and there were three of us there. I mean, you should have seen the look on our faces. I was the second one. There was a gentleman that was first. I stood right next to him, and then a woman came in after. It was like the three of us lined up. We were staring at an empty wall where eggs are supposed to be, dozens and dozens and dozens of eggs. And it was fascinating in that moment what happened, because for the woman on the right of me, it totally triggered her. It was like, I mean, I was just in shock because I'm still looking for the eggs. Like clearly there are no eggs here, but I'm just like, because I'm in the world of possibilities. So I'm looking up and I'm poking up there and thinking maybe the eggs are up. The eggs are not up 15 feet high on a shelf, right? But what the woman next to me said was very real for her.
Mm.
And she said, I've been up and down in life, but I've never walked in this store and have not been able to get eggs for my family and my children. Now that was real. She went from shopping
Mhm.
to worry
Mhm.
to whatever the next step is of that, because her mind started to tell her it's not about eggs. There's a bigger problem here. There's something for her. It was there's something happening for the food chain.
Mhm.
That's what happened to her. But she went so quickly down that pathway. Now, me, I'm looking on the other shelves because I'm in disbelief. There are
Yeah.
no eggs, but I'm not quite there until I left the room. And you know how I know something bothers me is when I repeat the story a couple of times, like
Yeah.
now. And I walked out and I said to Linda, I said, there's no eggs. Linda said, what do you mean there's no, this is Linda. What do you mean there's no eggs? I'm like, there's no eggs. There's got to be eggs. No, I'm telling you, it's like no eggs. You mean there's no eggs at all? I said, there's not a single egg product in there, not egg whites, not organ. She said, there's no eggs in there. I said, there's a completely nothing on the wall. Okay. But there are three of us there, and each of us are going to walk away with a
Yeah.
different perspective.
Mhm.
Now, me, I poked at the shelves, I walked out of the room, no eggs, and I went about my business. The woman to the right of me was clearly distressed. The gentleman to the left of me was very interesting because I think he went to Worrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, why am I talking about this? Because it's a benign situation for many people to think about it, but we never know what's going to be perceived as a threat and what's going to be perceived as a challenge, do we?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great example.
There were no eggs. I'm still a little shocked, but I made up a story about it. And I turned to the guy next to me, gentleman next to me, and I said, you know what? This has got to be from the snow we had. Okay, like 2 inches. This has got to be from the snow. The woman to the right of me said, no, it's not. It's work. I mean, you could see this. So what is my point? Three different people, we don't
Yeah.
know each other, and the emotional reaction, we look like the Three Stooges lined up
Yeah.
there. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. It was a comedy scene. And people would walk by us. And we were there for 5 minutes over the eggs. And the people walked by and would say, there are no eggs. And the gentleman would say, no, there are no eggs. So then the woman would say, oh my God, there's like no a broken accent. I can understand. There are no eggs, but there's nothing here, dairy. I mean, she went on to a state. So let's talk about this. This is real. This is life.
Mhm.
This is what goes on. What's the impact? Each of us had different beliefs, didn't we?
Mhm. Yeah. Everyone had a different experience, and like a mindset is really a set of beliefs. So our mindsets are and our beliefs are usually shaped by experience. And so she possibly came from a foreign country where there was a poverty, or they were on food stamps and scarcity. And so this triggered, her childhood. This triggered her whole life of scraping by, and now she's trying to provide for her family, right? So that's that mindset around that. Different people have different resources. So maybe you didn't have French toast on your menu for the next day, and it didn't matter if you had eggs or not, right? Maybe you're not baking banana bread. You're like, oh well, I don't need eggs. Like, it didn't impact you because you perceived that moment and that circumstance totally differently. And like I said, there's not a wrong or a right way. But even in that moment, so she got it, she went into Worrier. She started really, really worrying. And the way she could have, and I'm not trying to insult her story, but is to say, okay, but hold on. What else can I make for my family? What else is in the
Right.
store? All right, I'm gonna see if there's any fish. Are there sardines? Are there chicken breasts? Is there something else that I can get to feed my family? Eggs are not an option. So I got to take eggs off the table, and I got to come up with something else. And I'm going to use my resources. And so that's where that little pivot happens. And it's a bit of a muscle to exercise too. I mean, when people aren't wired to think that way, it's hard to just always to pivot. And it's not about being Pollyanna either and finding the gratitude in every moment. Be like, oh, great. Now I'm not, that's fantastic. There are no eggs because now I can just do, I mean, it's a bummer. We all like eggs for lots of different reasons, but it's in that moment of I recognizing this is I'm feeling she felt threatened. She definitely felt threatened in that situation. There's nothing I can do about this because I have no access to the eggs. But she didn't realize she was in an entire store that had other food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas you and maybe the other guy moved on and you just did the rest of your shopping. And so that was real for her. It doesn't mean that she can't ever change, but until she thinks about that and goes through this whole process, which I have a little bit later, we might go through how to kind of
Yeah.
change a more of a warrior mindset in certain moments, or understand why we feel threatened or
Yeah.
why we feel anxious about something.
Well, you can see the gentleman's reaction too. And this is one example, but this happens in life all the time.
All the
This
time.
happens the minute that you get a letter that looks a little suspicious, like it's somebody telling you you either owe them something or you did something. There's something that gets triggered, but this goes on all the time. Now, I will tell you, I do believe the gentleman had a true challenge because I made a joke and I said something like, good thing you're not making egg salad for a potluck, because you see, I've got a potluck come. And he looked at me and he smiled a little bit and he said, I have 4 jars of mayonnaise in my cart outside, not for egg salad, but for deviled eggs. And now I'm taking a picture of this for my wife. And I just looked at him. He said, she's not going to believe me that I came to this store, which she said would absolutely have eggs, and there are no eggs. I must take this picture. He said, could you go stand over there where by the sign eggs, just so I can tell my wife that this is real. So he is in the place now. He saw it as a challenge. He wasn't quite worrying, but he was warrioring to me.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I got in the picture and I said, look, I don't want to find this picture in any bathrooms, but, but his wife was so clear. Now, let's talk about this because this is a small scenario, but it's one of thousands we get hit with every day. Isn't that why we're talking about this, really?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the eggs, it's the bear, it's the eggs, it's the kids, it's the new flu, it's whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And people want to know, Heather, what do we do here?
Well, first of all, where I like to, when I first titled this workshop that I did with this warrior versus warrior, it was really changing the language around stress management to stress mindset. Because when doctors tell you, you got to manage your stress, you have to, managing your stress is a little bit of a trigger for me. Because I feel like managing just means I'm going to move it here, then I'm going to move it here, I'm going to put it in this box. Whereas maybe we change what we're saying to ourselves, our internal dialogue, to redefine what we are going to call something stressful. I think sometimes we can say, well, this is inconvenient. Inconvenient is a lot lighter than saying it's stressful. Stressful has a lot of weight to it. And so this is where I talk about stress mindset over stress management. I think we need to start with, are we labeling everything that doesn't go our way stress? I think we do. When there aren't eggs, now I'm stressed out because there aren't any eggs. And there's this, and I'm stressed out about that. And I've got a bill due and I'm stressed out about that. It's like, okay, we can just label everything as stressful. And then our body starts feeling that as, wow, this is a lot of stress. We have to start managing that. Well, how do you manage it? I prefer to change our mindset. Stop calling everything stressful and just take a step back and evaluate, is this challenging? Is this just inconvenient? Is this unexpected? We just need to pivot. Or is this something that's really threatening? And this does require a little bit more of our energy and some thought, and maybe things are out of our hands at the moment until we can, find a resource. So I like to start there with our language that we're using, and maybe not calling everything a stress, because then we start getting into our health and, the health and wellness. And this is one of the 4 pillars. The 4 pillars are sleep. And I use stress mindset. I don't use stress. I use stress mindset, nutrition and movement. And so this is one of those 4 things that's going to, add years to your life or take years away from your life. So understanding your position with it as an individual, and maybe some self-reflection on, gosh, how do I call everything? Because I've noticed with myself, I'll be talking to my kids. Oh my God, I'm stressed about this. I'm stressed. And then I need to like just stop using that word because I hear my kids say, I'm so stressed out. That's, we don't have to
Yeah.
be that way. We don't have to be so stressed out. I think we just need to sit back and reevaluate how we're labeling things and how we're identifying them, and then looking for some resource to leverage where we can pivot and start making a dent, start making a way towards a solution.
Yeah. Children are such a great reflection and mirror, aren't they?
Oh my God.
Especially when they come home and they say, well, mom, I could not do well. I was so overwhelmed and stressed today when I went to school because of what was happening in the house and there was no heat and I got stressed. And guess what? I couldn't take the test. And you're like, and then they're like, well, mom, you use. So,
Yeah.
part of this is what you're talking about in our ability to train the dragon, and that is the dragon of our mind.
Mhm.
Right? I love the symbol of a dragon. It is yet revered in cultures and feared in cultures. It depends on whether you can ride it or not, I guess.
Yeah.
But for today, what we're talking about is Warrior, Worrier. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about which one do you think you are? What are some of the elements of each of them? And how do you know? Is it something that automatically switches? Are there some of you out there that have something inside where you automatically go to that warrior stage, where you see it as that great obstacle course that you're trying and practicing to get over that wall? Or are you a worrier? And what are some of the things worriers do?
Mhm.
Sometimes, if you're a worrier, you don't do much. Heather,
Mm.
before we go to break, how do people find out more about you? Please give them some information.
Yes, I'm easy to find. My website is heatherwolcott.com, WOLCOTT. My Instagram is at Heather Johnson Wolcott. Same thing on Facebook. And you can always email me at heather@heatherwolcott.com. So it's not too tricky.
When we
Easy to
come back, we're going to talk about core beliefs. And this is really what Heather does. These are the people she works with, because these, when we're talking about being able to pivot, as you said, what we're talking about is having a superpower.
Mhm.
Pivot, being able to pivot. My dad used to say you got to pivot on a dime. Of course, he was talking about a car. But the point is, you have to be able to pivot. That was my dad's big thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Took us like 40 years to figure out what he actually meant. Let's take a short break when we come back. What does the belief say? If you're an entrepreneur and you wake up one day and you have this funny idea that pops in your mind, better known as a set of beliefs or a set of thoughts, and you wake up one day out of the blue, and for the first time, you believe you're not going to be successful. I don't care what you're doing. What do you do? Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's so great to have you. This is the Health and Nutrition Success Show. Heather Wolcott is the host of this show. I'm Dr. Pat. I get to help navigate the waters around how to achieve all things health. Today, we're talking about warrior versus worrier, and there's so many examples of this. But Heather, from where you come from where you sit, I really would love to hear some of the scenarios, some of the things that you've seen in the practice that you have with helping people even understand it's a mindset. What do
Mhm.
we do to help people navigate through those waters and then understand which one am I? Am I a warrior or am I a worrier?
Yeah. I think of a particular client that I had several years ago, and she was probably one of my few worrier clients. And I think this is where whenever I give this talk and I talk about this content, I think of her because she prayed a little bit of the victim mentality as well. So everything kind of happened to her. This her husband be doing this thing, but this happened to her. And so it was a little bit of a victim mentality, but worry. And she'd wake up with back pain and we get on a Zoom call, and she'd be curled up in bed at noon, like at lunchtime, hadn't gotten up, hadn't brushed her teeth, hadn't done anything because her back hurt and there was nothing she could do. And it was just this worry, worry, worry. And you look at the trajectory of that on her life and how that impacted other parts of her life. She, we were doing health coaching, so she was having weight loss. She had weight loss goals that she wasn't reaching because she was just in this mindset of, I can't, there's nothing I can do, nothing works, my back hurts, I did this but I crave the sugar, and so then I went ahead and I just ate all the cookies, and I'm worrying about that. So I've seen it play out a lot of times on the other side, but she's one in particular who I just saw really create this worry mindset around so many things. It was so sad. And I think now I haven't talked to her in a couple of years. I think now she's in a better place, which is great. But for a lot of my clients, when I'm coaching them, we get to meet weekly. So I have these weekly coaching sessions, and we get to tap into behaviors that they're doing that they want to be doing, behaviors that they're doing that they don't want to be doing. And we put all these things out in this really cool, in this exercise. We talk about core values and strengths, and all of those. When you start building off of those, and then you start building actions or goals and behaviors around your strengths and your values, you do feel a bit more like a warrior because you're leaning into your strengths. So when you are faced with something challenging, whether it's or frustrating, like I'm trying to lose weight and it doesn't seem to be working and blah blah blah, and they're kind of spiraling, we can take it back and say, hold on, first of all, what's going well? There are a lot of other things going well right now. Let's just highlight those. Now, in this particular situation, what's so important to you about this one number on the scale that you hit yesterday that's kind of insignificant because your weight's going to fluctuate back and forth, and changing the mindset around it, and then getting him out of that. And like I said, we build off of core values and strengths all the time, because when you lead with those, you're leading into a place of confidence. And when you feel like you've got confidence, I think that's when you feel like you can make a pivot, because you have some resources that are your own resources. It doesn't even have to be like, I have this anti-poison or this anti-venom, like I've got something to save me from the thing that's going to kill me. Sometimes it's your own resources of tapping into your strengths, into your own beliefs around something that can really just make the biggest difference for you, for your
And
health.
I'm so curious about this because, we've talked so much about this. And I think we now have so much information about this. We know the science, the studies that are coming out now that talk about this. And yet, in order, I love the idea of warrior, because what I see is you see the Captain America shield, or you see the power fists of Captain Marvel, or you know what I'm seeing? You see, Black Panther, you see their aspects of them that are warrior oriented, although every single one of those characters have had their own doubts. And so what does it take for us to step in to that place where we can shift from warrior to warrior? Because let's be realistic, we're human.
Yeah.
I think that there are some people in the world that will say, I don't worry, and they've learned how to master that. But for most people, they haven't.
Yeah. So that's going to go back to an initial question that I would ask somebody. And then that question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you believe that stress enhances your performance? 1, 10, it's very enhancing. 1, no, stress doesn't make me perform better at all. And you see where they hit on that. And if they're 1 to 5, then they are most likely in the mindset that stress is debilitating and it inhibits their productivity, and it keeps them from being successful. If they score 6 to 10, they're most likely in the mindset that stress can enhance my performance. It's beating the deadline. It's waiting to the last minute to pull into the airport because you're going to run to catch your flight. And you're not going to miss it because you kind of got that warrior, like, I'm pretty confident that I can do this. Like you thrive off of that. And that's kind of the place to start, is just reflecting on that question. Does stress enhance my performance, or does it debilitate my performance? And that's like a starting ground. And what we don't realize is that you can shift that to a stress is enhancing mindset, but it's a few steps. So I can kind of talk us through that. The first step is really just to acknowledge that you're stressed about something, that there is something that's bothering you. It could be something is like a conflict with someone that just makes you feel kind of like nervous or anxious. It could be a call from a doctor with a really unexpected diagnosis. It doesn't really matter, but you want to acknowledge that it's there. We don't want to just shove it in the box and pretend that it's not happening. So when we acknowledge that, it's also paying attention to your physical, like, does your heart beat? Do you get butterflies in your stomach? Do your palms get a little sweaty when you're thinking about this particular thing, or when you're in this particular situation? Do you get really, really quiet? Do you seem to talk more? And just noticing that, just let yourself notice and acknowledge that this is bothering me. And then the second step is, it sounds kind of weird, but it's actually to welcome the stress. So you want to welcome the stress, because we only get stressed about things that matter to us, something that we care about. And so it's really tied to a core value. It's tied to something of value to you. We don't stress out about something that's irrelevant to us, that has no personal connection to us. And so that kind of sheds some light on it, that this is actually important. It is important to me. And that's why I'm feeling all these things. So the second step is to welcome your stress, because it's connected to something you care about. So you don't want to push it away. You don't want to just ignore it and shove it off the side, because you're actually ignoring something that's important to you. You think about, yeah, the way we would avoid it would be like distractions.
Yeah.
I'm just going to turn the TV on. I'm just going
Yep.
to bury myself in this book I'm writing, and I'm not going to deal with this at all. And I know people who have had that as well. I had a friend who was getting some things biopsied, and they weren't coming back super great. And she was in really denial, but so strongly that she just really ignored it, because it was so overwhelming. She didn't even know how to go through any process with it.
Right.
And then the third step is to use your stress to identify the core value or the purpose behind it. So this is when I workshop this in a group or even a one-on-one, it's, I have people write this sentence down. I'm stressed about X because I care about Y. And once we realize that this thing that's making us feel anxious, worried, stressed, tense is tied to something because I actually care about this. And then we just go through this exercise of, and I say, write it down. I'm stressed about X because I care about Y. Then ask yourself, why? Why do you care about that? Because blah, 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 blah. Okay. Why? And as you go through this exercise, it seems really tedious and it seems like you'd end up going in a big circle. You eventually get down to a core value that ties into why you care so much. I shared an example when I presented this to the group of girls. My little quick story here is I was invited to be a keynote speaker at a pretty big event in Arizona in 23. And when I looked at the lineup of some other people and I started looking at their bios, I was like, oh, I am really out of my league. Like, I'm not sure how I got in this lineup. And, they're doing all this promotional material and stuff. And I was very well prepared. I had a presentation that I love talking about. I knew my information inside and out, but I was so stressed. I had to fly to Arizona for it. And I was just anxious and stressed. And I had butterflies. I was sweating. Even when I got to Arizona, I was so nervous. And so when I did this exercise later to demo it, I kind of went through, I'm stressed about my presentation because I care about, and I actually said, I care about how people perceive me. I care about these other speakers I'm speaking from. Like, I care about how I'm going to look. Why? Because my business is built on my credibility to know my information and to be an eloquent speaker. And I don't want to I don't want to look like an imposter. Why? Because I need to grow my business and build clients. And I would love to connect with these people outside of this conference and this mastermind and collaborate with them. Why? And I kept going through why do you care? Because, and I came down to, after I went through this many times, my core value was, I'm actually nervous about this because I really want to give good information, because in the end, I want to help people. Why do I care about how I look? Why do I care, like my image on stage? Why do I care if I make sense or not? Because I want to be able to continue helping people. I want them to hire me or put me on another stage so I can give my message and I can help more people.
Right.
My core value was really about, I really just want to help people and I love what I do. I want to be of service. And so therefore I'm nervous because when I present myself, I want to make sure I'm conveying that I know what I'm doing so that I can work with these people. Does that make
It
that
totally makes sense. I mean, you were talking about this and I flash back to when I had my dissertation proposal, not even the defense. The defense was like a cakewalk. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. But the proposal, I had 3 committee members. One of them absolutely did not like me. And I knew that if I could get through this, he was going to be gone. He would just get rid of him. And, I walked in there totally prepared. And it didn't matter what I said, how I answered the question. In his eyes, I was never going to be right. And, there are 3 people that judge you on the proposal side, not even, this is before you actually do the work. But if you don't pass this board, you don't go anywhere. I mean, it is a big problem for a lot of people, right?
Wow.
And I heard that in the history of this school, no one had ever been asked to leave the room more than one time until me. And I didn't know this till later, but I kept presenting, and there was a tension in the room. And I had to go out and I walked the hall. So there you are. Am I going to be a worrier, or am I going to be a warrior in that moment? And I took every tool in the book that I had, including prayer, to make sure that when I went back in, I kept my cool. And in the end, there's a balance of that warrior energy. And I'm so glad you're using that term, because sometimes we think it's like fighting. It's like getting in the ring. But it's not always. It's that thing that is it's inside of us, where we feel strong, where we feel confident, where we're willing to take on, somebody on a committee that no matter what you say, I mean, he wasn't going to pass me. Thank God, 2 out of 3. But when it got to the point where it became so obvious in the room, this was my relief button, because I don't know if I would have been able to pull this off without it. When he kept coming at me, and the other 2 advisors looked at him and said, she has answered the question 3 times. And, that's one scenario. But every day people go to work. They're earning a wage every day. How they serve a lunch, how they clean a room, how you present at an executive meeting. And yet what you shared today, most people don't know how to do. They don't.
Yeah.
And, you've done a previous shows about sleep. I was talking to a friend of mine who hasn't slept in a month over a situation. And, we finally helped him with the situation. But not sleeping for a month. But why? Because he didn't think he had any control over getting his car back, didn't have the funds, trapped in his house, couldn't see a way out, has to move out of his condo. I mean, and this is my question to you, because this is, I think, the core of why we're doing this show. You want to help people, and people need your help. See, that's the point. Why are we talking about things like this? I'm not here because I did this by myself. You're not here because of that. This is a show to help so many people that are worrying a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah. And they're worrying about their health. I mean, their health is, all we need to do is look at some statistics, and they're really discouraging. So this is an issue that touches pretty much everybody. I mean, it's truly about 8% of our population that doesn't have any metabolic dysfunction or disease. 8%, that means we have over 90 people who meet one of the criteria for metabolic dysfunction. That's not good. And when all of these things are stacking on top of each other, we say our health is our wealth. I mean, if you're not well and you can't go to work, you're not getting your paycheck. There's that whole path for a lot of people. Other people are just, they have their job, but they're brain foggy. They don't have good energy. They aren't sleeping well. They're maybe not giving it their best. They could probably be producing better, or they could be more creative if they had better health, if they had less brain fog, if they were getting better sleep, if they were exercising, They weren't on so many medications. And so it just all trickles down. And the research is very clear that when we have a stress is enhancing mindset, that our body adapts to that positively. That we, I think we probably have all know a story of someone, if not, there's a movie about it, with who, and I always use diagnosis because in the health and wellness space, this is what you get. It was an autoimmune disease. It was a cancer. It was an allergy, or that's life threatening, whatever it is. So that's where I always kind of go. But they get this information, and that's where that's where the rubber hits the road. What are you going to do in that moment or in the next few days that's going to change the trajectory of how your body responds to that information and to that diagnosis and to the symptoms that you have? And so I'm sure I have perfect other examples, but I mean, a specific example of someone who was diagnosed with cancer. It's kind of like takes a minute. And then it was on the phone contacting the doctor that saw them several years ago when they had something else that wasn't that serious. They weren't sure. Who do you know? Where can I go? What are the resources I need? Who else do I know? There's a podcast I just listened to on this topic. I'm going to go back and listen to it and see what protocols did they get. I mean, there's just information out
Yeah.
there, but if you have a stress is enhancing mindset, you're more likely to take those steps. You're more likely to say, I think there's something I can do. I'm not just going to sit here and die, or I'm not going to sit here and be in pain. They tell me I'm not going to walk again because my arthritis is going to be so bad, or this stroke is, I'm never going to be able to move the side of my body from the stroke that I had. You have to overcome that. You have to have the mindset to overcome that. And I believe you can. I think we've seen that over and over and over again. There's so many stories about that. So when it comes to health and wellness, I just think it's so powerful. And if we have that mindset, again, the body responds, it adapts to that in a positive way. And I mean, this is even health related, but we were talking earlier that there was I guess kind of like a study. It was like an example done, and this was just in high schools, and they split the whatever senior class, whatever, in half. I might be getting some of this wrong, but you get the idea. And they showed the first 10 minutes of the day. They showed a video to one half, and it was all of these moments where there were athletes and people going like in a high pressure situation who overcame it. The free throw line that makes a shot wins the game. The interception in the football game, making the touchdown, and all of these moments where someone overcame the unexpected, the unlikely, and there was victory and there was success. And then the other video showed the person at the free throw line under pressure and they miss. The person running on the track and then they trip and they fall right before the finish line. And all these situations where the person who is, paralyzed falls and they can't get back up. And then they followed and they tracked these students for the rest of the day. And I think they had an exam to take that day. And the students who watched the successful videos all had, at the end of the day, they reported having a better mood. They did better. They performed better on their work. They performed better on their tests. And the ones who saw all the negative stuff ended up saying that they were depressed by the end of the day. Mood was bad. They didn't do as well. And so it's kind of like in those moments, you either make the free throw, is that pressure. I'm going to be a warrior. I'm going to be so laser focused. Sometimes you miss it also, but you can keep playing the game, right? So I think it's just important to use that example in it's what you feed your mind, the way you take a situation and how you interpret it and what you do with it. When you get some information that's not expected, that's really heavy and it's really hard because a lot of people are worrying. They're worrying about a lot of things. What are your resources? How can this enhance your performance? What can you do now that you know this? Maybe take it as that's the first thing that you start with. Thank God now that I know this, because now I can do something about it.
Yeah.
You can still worry or you can take action.
I love this example. I love what you're talking about because everybody, any of you listening to this, you're flashing through your mind right now because you're thinking of circumstances exactly like this. Whether you're an athlete or not, the question really becomes then, Heather, what are you surrounding yourself? It was interesting. I was playing I can't remember if it was last week, whenever I was playing doubles and very close game. And I tend to be motivated, not when I'm ahead 8-4. Okay. If I'm ahead 8-4, I think I'm on vacation. And then before you know it, it's 8-8, right? Then I'm motivated again. But I'm motivated when I'm behind. If I'm behind in a game, something happens to me and I've got to change that because that's not good. But I was playing with somebody the other day and he had the shot he had the shot, and it was a deuce game. We were down the ad, and he had the shot, and he didn't take the shot. And I looked at him and I said, Mikey, why didn't you take the shot? And what he said to me was so telling. I didn't want to make this was his, see, I'm thinking you make the shot and you win the point. This was his answer to me. I didn't want to take the shot and be responsible for the losing point. And I was like, I mean, you see the look on my face? I was like, but that was very real for him. And so I understood that. And so when I, and so I didn't make him feel little, because he's a very big guy. And I didn't say anything to him. And I joked and I said, you know what? Next time we play, I'll take that shot. And you could see the relief.
Yeah.
Now, why is that? That is so deeply embedded in some wounding somewhere.
Oh, that's deep. Yeah.
It's a deep one. However, what you and I are talking about is learning the technique to shift a mindset like that.
Yeah.
So we can move boldly, courageously through life. That's what you're doing, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, whether it's in a relationship or it's in your job or it's with your kids or it's with your health. I mean, it's a pillar of health. I mean, this stress mindset is a pillar of health. It is going to determine how long you live and how long you live well. So if you are really struggling, like maybe you're fit and you eat well and your sleep's pretty good, but if this is just pulling you down, it's real. The body responds to that negatively when you're just constantly in this worrying, high stress state. And so it's really shifting out of that. And I just say, like, grab onto anything, just any little pivot, anything that you can do to take action so that it's a challenge and it's not a threat. Most things that happen to us are not life-threatening. Most. Maybe a couple thousand years ago, everything was probably life-threatening, right? But most things that happen to us in our day that don't go our way are inconvenient, unexpected. They're not life-threatening. And so if we just take a step back and realize I'm not threatened by this, this is just something I have to find a resource to overcome it. It can change your entire life. It can change every way you move forward in your health and relationships and your job.
And it's different for everyone. Heather, thank you so much for today. Can you let folks know a little bit more about how they can connect with you, what you have upcoming, whether it's workshops or other things like that?
Yes. So I'm most active on Instagram at Heather Johnson Wolcott. On Instagram, you can DM me and check out my content there. I usually have something almost every day. My website, heatherwolcott.com. I don't have anything coming up yet, but I might have a workshop coming up soon, and it might be this one, just to go through that whole process and to have some dialogue around that. So that might be coming up in the wings. And that's pretty much it. I'm pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Heather, thank you so much for today. Last question. What's your personal message? What would you like to leave us all with?
My personal message is there's always hope. So for the worriers, there's always hope. There's always something that you can grab onto. And even if it's little and it can shift you from being a worrier into a warrior, I say grab it.
And, thank you all for tuning us in, turning us on. I mean, what Heather shared today is so important. And we want to just say to all of you is we recognize that wherever you are, it's very real.
Yeah.
And, in the world that you and I live in, we recognize and meet people where they are. That's what Heather does. So please reach out to her. If you want to shift from worry to warrior, please reach out to her. There's nobody that does it better. We'll see you next time.
You have been listening to the Health and Nutrition Success Show, helping you achieve all things health on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm Heather Wolcott. Tune in second Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific for more pearls to inspire, motivate, and educate you to make changes in your and your family's health and lives. I love blowing minds with cool tips and hacks that can make a significant difference if you try them. In each episode, I share client stories about their successes and their wins. Send me an email to heather@heatherwolcott.com and let me know how the show has impacted you or what you've done to improve your health or the health of someone you love. You can also visit my website, heatherwolcott.com.